Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and today I'm going to do a toolbox tour. Actually, I'm going to do the whole toolbox drawer by drawer. Each drawer gets its own video, and today I'm going to do the screwdriver drawer. I've spent a bunch of time kind of refining this, getting it down to what I use, and I'm going to go over some of the ideas, wisdom, things that I like, things that I don't. So let's get to it. When I first started out, say with the newer snap-ons, I decided I would go maybe color-coded, red for the standard slotted and green for the Phillips. But unfortunately, you know, when things would break or I'd have a handle, you know, replaced or something, you know, especially I had some older screwdrivers, kind of like this one. And when this would get replaced, I'd be kind of at the whims of whatever this local Snap-on franchisee had. So rather than say, no, I'll wait, I just would go ahead and get the replacement. But I ended up not being able to follow through with all of the color coding. Same with the Phillips long one here, cabinet screwdriver, ended up only having red available. So if I could have done it different, I probably would have been more of a stickler and really tried to stay with that, but not everything turns out that way. A few of my favorites in here. One, I'm a big fan of the ratcheting screwdrivers, especially Snap-ons. I'll do a whole video on these, but absolutely love them. I think I'm not sure if their angles are quite what they should be, but I'll go into that in the different videos. I spend a lot of time thinking about handles on screwdrivers, and there's a lot of different shapes. We've got the traditional round ones, you've got the Snap-on Instinct grip. Snap-on's worked with, you know, with the square ones in the past. They've kept a lot of the square ones still going with their newer design. Snap-on's had some, you know, work with triangular ones as well. This is an old one here, but I'll be talking a lot about that. Mac has gone with kind of a combination square and recessed. And then, of course, these crazy things, which I am not fond of whatsoever, but can't seem to get rid of. Anyway, so what I'd like to do is go through a few of the ins and outs. The question of whether or not you need Snap-on screwdrivers. I think they're screwdrivers, they're wrenches, sockets. Those are like the must-have if you're going to bother with Snap-on. And the machining, the way that these are designed, really do make a difference, especially in inexpensive fasteners. Because sometimes if you're using a cheap screwdriver, just the added slop of that cheap screwdriver and the cheap fastener can cause a bigger problem. Of course, if you use high-quality fasteners, high-quality screws, then these things really shine. I think it's more important with the Phillips than it is with the slotted, but a nice, good, solid slotted really makes a difference. I was once working on a project. Most of the stuff I do is all DIY, but I was working on a project where I needed a screwdriver. I was up on a roof, actually, and the homeowner provided me a screwdriver. Actually, he gave me about 5 of them, and they were all inexpensive, cheap, stripped out, like old Stanleys and Craftsmans and no names. And, you know, it was like, here, one of these should fit. And they were all garbage by that point. Maybe they might have been serviceable at one point, but they were just junk, but he wouldn't get rid of them. And so I said, look, let me throw away all of these screwdrivers and I'll give you one good Snap-on that works. It was kind of a tough love, but they were useless. And I'm up on a roof thinking I can't use any of these tools. So I ended up getting him a Snap-on, and I think he's happy with it, but now I worry that he won't use it because it's too expensive, so he uses some old junk one again. When it comes to the handle or the handle size, I think it's important to think about kind of that intersection or that relationship between dexterity and strength, because a lot of times, you know, as things get smaller in terms of blade tip, we also go with a smaller handle, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily make it easier to use. This is one of my favorites. It's a larger, I mean, the bigger handle, but very short. I really like the feel of this thing. Snap-on does not make anything like this, which is why I've got a Craftsman here. And I find this is a go-to for a lot of projects. Others, as they get, like this is a bigger handle. This actually fits great in my hand. This can be convenient, but it's a little bit tough. I often find myself choking up on them. To this knurled edge, which is not very knurled. I wish that was a lot grippier. But sometimes Snap-on just scales things up and scales things down until you've got a tiny, little handle. It's convenient, but I think that you have to look at the size of the hand being a constant. It stays the same, so shrinking things does, you hit a point of diminishing returns where things start to get harder to use. And just because they came up with this perfect shape maybe for a full hand like this doesn't mean it scales down into a tiny form factor. So I'm still looking. I am a fan of this particular kind of a handle. The little bit of rubber makes a difference, and it also has a kind of an easier clean surface. Not as easy as the full hard handles, but still pretty good compared to, say, the full-on rubber. This is a Klein here. This is one of my favorites here. This is the, I think it's 11-in-1. Has Torx and Phillips and slotted, and it also works as a nut driver here. Very common. Sometimes I take business trips. I'll actually have something like this because this, and this, it meets the TSA requirements or limitations for tools. Anyway, so I like this. Little heavy, beefy, great price. I think these are only like 20 bucks or something versus about 15 for a Craftsman multi screwdriver. I like the ratcheting screwdrivers. Big fan of them. I have several of them. I will do a separate video again on the angles and ways that I use these and even repair them. But I'm absolutely thrilled by the ability to have interchangeable shafts, interchangeable lengths, and for dedicated bits, as well as the ability to put sockets or 1/4-inch drive tools on these. And I find this is kind of my go-to for a lot of things. However, I do find that it is pretty heavy, kind of big. This I wish was deeper. They do have a little bit of a limitation, as how many bits you can get in it. And a lot of times I started using these longer bits, which I can't put in the back. But I do think they're an exceptional tool, and if you can, stomach the cost of one of these guys, they're definitely worth having. This is my my favorite stubby. I have several different kinds of stubbies. Klein makes a good reversible one as well, but the ratcheting mechanism, the fit in the hand, and this is where they used a large bulbous handle on a smaller screwdriver, and I like that. And of course they were limited because that's how the ratcheting mechanism works, and of course it takes all of the different bits here or shafts. And this particular one, I'm quick to grab it, super strong, absolutely love it. They're way expensive for what they are, a little on the heavy side, but I find that these guys here are just impossible to use. They tend to fly out of my hand. Whoops, wonder where it went. They're just not, I don't believe, a good design. I mean, it's very hard. You have to, maybe it sits in your hand, but it really doesn't twist very easily, and it's hard to line up and hold on to. That's my take on it anyway. Old school, I really like these, especially electrical work. The different Kleins here, the first two here, they're fixed bits, and these actually come in really handy, especially with electrical work, because it's not a drill, but you do have the ability to spin things, and then you can kind of choke up on it if you need to tighten it, but most of the stuff you don't have to get too tight. This particular one actually has interchangeable bits. You can see the Phillips and slotted in one, so it's kind of a handy little tool. I still find myself grabbing these. You know, it's a lot easier than grabbing a drill. And the precision, because you can go back and forth quite easily. You know, just tipping it back and forth till you get the right tightness. That can be a problem with some of the these ratcheting screwdrivers. You know, if you're ratcheting it in one direction and then you hit the end and you want to back it off a little bit, you have to physically change this. Or you can put it in the middle and use it as a solid, but then you've got all of this overhead of weight and size and cost if you're not using it for the ratcheting mechanism. So that's where these can come in pretty handy if I'm doing like outlet work, wall sockets, etc. But it's really hard to get anything super tight, so you tend to have one of these handy that you can go ahead and finish up the job with it. As far as little screwdrivers, Snap-on, they're not terribly expensive, but you can get a handful of Klein's. Klein makes some really good ones. I like the form factor of their newer ones. Rubberized coating here, easy spin on the tip and marked well. I mean, easy on the back of the handle, and this actually allows you to, you know, just eyeball it, because sometimes that you might not be able to see the tip as easy in say a tool chest, or if it's in a bag slid down into the pouch. This is one that they came out with that I like. This is actually a Klein, but it flips around, so it's pretty easy to use in either configuration. I still have the plastic cap, there we go, on it, and I find that these come in super handy. I keep them in my car. They're only like 10 bucks, and they allow you to, you know, fix small things, small electronics, eyewear, etc. And then they have another one now that's come out that actually has a shroud that slides over. So these fit better in your pocket. And this actually has, you know, the interchangeable bit or reversible bit. But it also pops out, and this is off center, I mean asymmetrical, so you can slide it in, and now you've got a nice solid longer one. If this slides out, it obviously doesn't cover the bit anymore because this is too long. But if I just flip it around, I don't have to have that plastic cover. If I've got a need to put it in something where it could tear or poke through, or my pocket, I can just slide this up, and there you go. So I'm a big fan of that. This to me is another sleeper on the Snap-on truck. I like these. All it is a little light plastic handle with a reversible bit, and it's not a strange bit like they, you know, if I go to this Klein here, you know, those are a little bit harder to find than something that looks like this. But easy, small, very handy. A little pricey. I think these are about 20 bucks, but definitely something I like to have around. I don't necessarily need a pocket clip. I don't carry it in my pocket like that, but there's always one probably within arm's reach. A few other things is I've kind of kept my eye on what Milwaukee and a few other companies are doing with these long shafts. They actually do fit into some of the other screwdrivers, so it is possible to turn a screwdriver into a longer driver pretty easy. This one isn't magnetic. If I grab a magnetic one here, like this one, now it'll stay in a little bit better, won't fall out. And I find these really handy. And then you can just drop almost any bit in here and it actually stays in there. Even the shorter ones like this tend to stay in, and now it's in there nice and solid. This one here is a Diablo, maybe known more for saw blades, etc. But foot long, holds 1/4 inch hex, which brings me to things like this. This is an old school Snap-on. You can kind of read that. This is a bit driver. It has storage in the back for some bits. Notice because I'm not limited by that length, I can get some longer pieces in there. And I actually really like these things. This particular one and its friend here are no longer made. I've asked my Snap-on dealer about them, and they just don't make them. But what is kind of amazing about these compared to others, like this Klein here, is that the bit strength, when you put a bit in, is actually much stronger. In this is probably the strongest one here, in the Snap-ons, way stronger. That bit is not going to come out easy. Whereas a lot of the others, and the only reason this Klein's in here is because it does have a stronger magnet. But a lot of them are just junk. The different ones, they just don't hold the bit very strong. So the moment, you know, it gets a little wedged in a fastener, you know, this just pops out, and then all of a sudden, where's my bit? And it's still stuck in there. And that can be a big pain if you're doing a lot of repetitious work. Like if sometimes I work on campers, and there's a lot of aluminum and areas where there's just a ton of either grabber screws or small metal screws, and I'm doing them by hand because I don't want to strip things out at all, or I'm wedged in up against an edge or something, and I keep popping the bit out. So that's why I got kind of a passion for really strong magnets. Another thing, and I wish Snap-on would actually make or bring back their bit drivers like this. You can get them on eBay, but they're hard to find and way expensive. You know, when you start getting into money, you might as well move towards something like this. Another thing is in terms of bit sets, I have several different kinds. My favorite actually is the Klein, and generally it comes with a driver like this. That's how it's usually sold. Obviously, it's a pain to have to move either to operate the screwdriver with this thing in place or to keep pulling it on and off. But I've had really good luck with these bits holding up, even the small ones, and you know, like these Torx here that have Torx and hex have the hole in it for security, kind of a security bit, but these work great. And the whole thing was like maybe 25 bucks, something like that. Whereas other bit sets, I just find that they kind of strip out, or they're cheaper material. But they do make a big difference when you just need to grab one driver and a bunch of bits, and you can do about anything, especially if you get into some odd stuff that might not have some standard fasteners in it. Kind of prepares you for it. Snap-on also makes some dedicated bits designed for their screwdrivers. So I can always pop these guys out if I wanted and use one of their dedicated bits, or this is their hex driver, so I can put on 1/4-inch sockets. If you get one of these adapters, this one's actually made by Mac, but you can actually flip back and forth between, say, a 1/4-inch adapter and a 1/4-inch bit driver. These are designed to go in there, so I can go back and forth either way. So if I pop that on this one and then drop that in, it allows me then to use all of the ratchets, etc., with my bits. So I highly recommend these things. Snap-on also makes one. But basically, those are the main tools that I do like. What do I not like? Inexpensive screwdrivers. I get rid of them. I don't even want them around. I don't want them as an option. I don't share them, give them away, or anything. They're just out of here. I do like, on the Precisions, the small ones. Snap-on makes great ones. Klein makes great ones. But you kind of go through them if you use them hard. These are pretty fragile, so make sure you use the biggest one you possibly can. Sometimes you see a little tiny screw, so you get a little tiny screwdriver, and it actually would have fit just fine with a bigger tip. But you don't realize that until you've damaged it, because the size screws that this fit in can be really tiny. Kind of surprising. And then I'm pretty careful when I get way down to using, something this small, because you could just damage it or snap it off pretty quick if you're not careful. There are a few other kinds of handles. I'll show you that in a sec. There are bit drivers like this that are designed to, reach in. This one's wrong side here. Here we go. Reach into some places. These can come in handy. They come in flat and angled. These are those things that when you need them, you absolutely need them. But it might be, like in my case, once or twice a year. But when you need them, you need them. This is a T-handle. I have several different kinds of T-handle tools. This one's just a screwdriver, but these can be quite handy. But I can quickly grab my go-to snap-on and mimic this somewhat. This is at a 90-degree intersection here between the shaft and the handle. This is at 60 degrees. I find 90 degrees a lot more comfortable than 60. Snap-on says, that's what you shake hands with. Well, I don't shake hands like I'm screwing a screw in, but I do get it. And this can come in pretty handy for really applying a bunch of force, but you have to be a little bit careful too, because it is a very strong, high torque tool. I can easily switch it around and then get some further leverage here. So they have their place. This was that little Klein stubby. Real handy. It's got the standard Klein, rubber-coated acetate or whatever that is handle. But then this also flips around, and I've got both a bit driver and 2 reversible bit screwdrivers in it, and it fits in. So that's another one that comes in pretty handy, and I definitely like this better than these crazy snap-ons that go flying all over the place and are hard to hold on to. And then, one last thing, there are a lot of ratcheting screwdrivers. Here's a Mac one down here, and the angles and the play, to me, is really important when I'm trying to do anything precise, especially if it's locked in a position, because I want to, like with electronics especially, get it just at the right amount of torque for what I'm doing. And the problem is, let's put a bit on here, if I have to rattle back and forth, I lose that precision, that feel of getting the bolt, or the fastener exactly where I want it. So in this case, that's a lot of play compared to, say, a snap-on. Put it in the middle here, lock it. Let me get this red one. The reason is I've been playing around. This one's got some funky stuff going on inside, you can hear, compared to this. This is a little harsher. I'll pull this one apart in another video and show you what's going on. I'm going to get a factory or a snap-on service replacement on that, warranty it out. But anyway, if I put this in the center right here, that's really tight. There's not much play at all compared to this Mac. See the difference? And also, what I can do is, if I count the number of clicks, or I want to know what my angle is when I'm using or choosing a tool. In this case, what can happen here? Let's see, pull out a couple other. Oops, not that drawer. Whoops, not that drawer. There it is. Little teasers for upcoming videos. What you can do, I can place this here on this circle. It's like just a protractor. Of course, I can count and be the same. I can line up an edge here, and I'm going to count what it takes to go 90 degrees, or 1/4 of a rotation. So I line this up, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 times 4, this is a 40. The snap-on, line that up. Let me grab a flat bit, make it a little easier. So I can hold this one up. And now when I put it, I'll ratchet it, to the point where I'll line up, say I'll just use this access port for the handle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12, so that's a 48. 48 versus 40 on these two Macs. I mean on these two screwdrivers, the Mac and the Snap-on. So this one takes less of a rotation to advance it one more ratcheting click. So I can do things a little bit more precise. I like the handle a lot better. Like I said, I'll go into that in another video. But anyway, so this is my screwdriver drawer. It's taken me years to finally get it to this point. I know exactly where everything is. I know exactly what I've got, and I move through this quite easily, even though it might look like a bit of a mess. So, I've got comments, questions, put them in the comment section, and enjoy. Doc out.